Why? I spent my whole life trying to get away from these people.
They murdered my brother.
Right. That's exactly
and
why
then
we're
they
going
had
to stay
the nerve
away.
to show up at the memorial service and hug you and shake my hand. Jason shook my hand with the same hand he used to beat your father's brains out.
It's that right there. Forgiveness. Is that even possible under the circumstances that these characters find themselves in? Welcome back, where today we'll be breaking down episode 3 of TAS, which was titled Nobody Stronger Than Forgiveness. It's in this episode that we find out who MZ is, but is there another leak within the Dark Hearts? We see Cliff makes a terrible decision that has made them a target in an investigation, and speaking of the investigation, Tom finds out that there's a leak within the task force, but the question is, who? We've got another great episode to discuss and break down, so let's get right into it. Spoilers ahead. The episode opens with Robbie and Mave in a tense conversation. Now, while the kids are asleep inside, we see Robbie finally lays out his motivations behind his recent crimes and putting his family at an incredible risk. This all began after members of the Dark Hearts, including Jason, attended Billy's funeral. He recounts the audacious moment Jason, the very man who beat his brother's brains out, had the nerve to shake his hand. And despite knowing Jason being the one responsible for his brother's death, Robbie was forced to utter the polite, gut-wrenching phrase,
"Say thank you for coming."
For Robbie, Billy's death cannot be in vain. He believes taking the Dark Heart's money and making a better life for his family is the only way to honor his brother. To me, this is a critical interaction of revenge and a deeply flawed sense of justice. He's convinced himself that his actions are righteous, the only possible response to an unbearable loss. But Mave, grounded in painful reality, challenges him. His justifications don't erase the truth. If and when he gets caught, his children will always remember him as a thief, a murderer, and a kidnapper. That will be his legacy, one that is already being forged. Mave foresees Jason eventually discovering Robbie's involvement, a prospect Robbie embraces, welcoming the opportunity to finishing what he couldn't do at the funeral.
Let him come and
shake my hand! See what happens this time, mother!
This isn't the Robbie Mave knows, and she desperately reminds him of the life he had before seamlessly throwing it all away for revenge. Now, Robbie's response is a desperate testament to his exhaustion with his former existence. He describes his so-called life as a trash man picking up others' garbage and coming home to kids who constantly ask if their mother is ever coming back, a question he has no answers for. He's tired of that life. He pleads with Mave for a few more days, revealing the stolen drugs are worth at least $1 million. He wants to take care of his kids, and he needs his only remaining family, Mave, to support this decision, regardless of it being a happy or sad ending. Well, let me tell you, it looks like the emotional weight from last week's episode carried right into this opening scene, and man, I just felt Robbie's anger and frustration and hate towards what happened to his brother, which ultimately led him to believe that he can pull this off. Now, I'm clearly not saying what Robbie's doing is right. Killing and kidnapping is never the answer, but I can see how someone in Robbie's situation could be fueled by such revenge and could force themselves to believe that they are doing the right thing and it's the only way to handle this. This to me was a perfect table setter for the theme of this episode, and that's forgiveness. Robbie can't forgive or forget what Jason did, and that's put him and his family in danger. As we watch throughout this episode, we see other characters having to be faced with a similar situation, and that's giving forgiveness as well. Meanwhile, at the task force HQ, Kathleen is under pressure. An upcoming press conference requires updates on the recent events. Now, Lizzie provides intel on Peach's past, including a prison stint for assault, and she plans to visit his job for more leads. Now, Aleah reveals a significant development. A tracker was placed on a drug runner named Cosmos Gill's car. Cosmos was involved in picking up the fentanyl from the Dark Hearts, valued at an estimated $1.6 million. Again, the working theory that the task force currently have, and I have as well, and that there is a leak, a rat, inside the Dark Hearts that are communicating with Robbie. Now, in connection with my theory that Tony is the leak from last week, did you all notice who was late to this meeting? It was Tony. Now, later in this episode, he makes an abrupt end to the hangout with Lizzie. Again, the question is Tony the leak within the task force? More on that a little bit later. Now, it's here that we're officially introduced to Freddy, the head of the Dominicans who control the drug distribution across the city. Now, Freddy is well aware of the recent hits on the Dark Hearts houses. Now, Jason and Perry need his help, and he questions why he should help them, but we see Perry and Jason quickly explain the threat. These recent raids are disrupting the Dark Hearts business, which we know is the second largest drug distribution in the city. If their product isn't selling, competitors will replace them, causing a domino effect that would eventually impact Freddy's own operations. Now, this is the kind of guy that Freddy is. Freddy shares the story of his early days in America as he was beaten by bikers who disliked him because of his skin color. Since then, he's made it his mission to assure that his product is cheaper, purer, and faster than any of his competitors, including the Dark Hearts. He's in control, knowing they need him more than he needs them, as they agree to pay him 50% wholesale if the people who rob them come to Freddy to push the drugs. So, what did I take away from this scene? First off, Freddy seems to be a self-made man. He wasn't handed a gang to lead like Jason, but he grew his own empire himself. Second, he isn't just going to take whatever scraps the Dark Hearts hand him. He wants what he thinks he deserves because they're coming to him for help, and again, it's not the other way around. And lastly, this cast just keeps getting better. I've been such a big fan of Elvis Nolasco since I was a kid, watching him pop up on television shows, whether that was New York Undercover, Law and Order, NYPD Blue, just to name a few. But also, I know him from his frequent collaborations with Spike Lee, like Clockers, and even his most recent role when he played a supernatural serial killer in Mr. Crockett. He's just an incredibly talented actor. Now, this to me was a great introduction to this character, and his inclusion, I'm sure, will only add more depth and complexity to this overall story. It's clear that Freddy knows what's going around in his town, so him already knowing about the recent hits on the Dark Hearts isn't surprising, but I do wonder if he or someone in his crew may be the one that might be assisting Cliff. Freddy mentioned how his product is much better than his competitors, so I wonder if he's some way wrapped into the league. He might have given Cliff that gun, he might be talking to Robbie on the side, and that's like his way of getting back at the Dark Hearts, is like working on a way of getting them robbed and disrupting their distribution. Now, back at Robbie's, MZ texts him to meet for a swim, and as soon as I saw that text, I said to myself, what drug dealer texts another person that's a criminal to go for a swim? This, to me, immediately, my theory about Aaron being involved was becoming a reality. As someone that likes to pay attention to characters' reactions during pivotal moments, Aaron's response here immediately caught my eye. The look she gives Jason when he takes the call was very suspicious to me. Now, of course, she's in a relationship with the head of a gang, so a natural reaction would be to worry when you have these type of phone calls so early in the morning. But what if Aaron was anticipating this very call? What if she's the mysterious MZ Robbie's connect? Speaking of, we watch as Robbie and Cliff go to meet MZ, and it's cut between them driving and Mave looking at old photos of her and her dad Billy. And as she picks up one of the photos of Billy, and there's a woman in one of the photos, and we see Billy and her are happy together, and that woman is no other than Aaron, confirming my suspicions that I had about her last week. Could Billy have been romantically involved with Jason's girlfriend or wife or whoever she is, Aaron, and again, who I think could potentially be MZ. Again, if Billy slept with the boss's girl Aaron, that would definitely lead to him being killed by the head of the gang. Now we watch as Robbie and Aaron hug, but Cliff's got a bone to pick with her because it was her job to feed them all the right things to ensure that the hit goes smoothly, but obviously we know it was far from a smooth hit as Cliff yells at her for basically being the one to drop the ball on the whole situation. Now Aaron tells Robbie about the meeting between Jason and Freddy, making it impossible for Robbie to use Freddy to move the drugs. Now Aaron believes Jason's days are numbered, which means Robbie and Aaron's plan is working. Now, Robbie's not concerned about the original plan, he only cares about getting the money for his family. It's here we learn what I suspected, that Billy and Aaron were romantically involved and she loved him despite being in a relationship with Jason. Aaron tells Robbie to hold off from moving the drugs until she gives him the okay, despite Robbie's eagerness to move them. Now, Cliff, on the other hand, believes they're on their own now, and he doesn't trust Aaron as he tells Robbie that he knows someone who might help them move the drugs. Now, MZB and Aaron didn't come as a shocker to me because of my theory that I shared with you all last week, but it all makes sense. Remembering the text that MZ sent Robbie about saying that her boss kept her late last week, that was in reference to Donna, who we briefly met at the bar in last week's episode. This revelation has so many implications now, especially knowing that Jason's on the chopping block, and now having his girl being a rat doesn't do him any favors. Now the question is, how did Jason find out about this affair, and how long was this affair going on? Now, I'm thinking about Jason interacting with those two kids, and they seem to be his kids, and I'm assuming that they may be Aaron's kids as well. Well, I'm starting to think maybe those kids aren't Jason's, maybe they're Billy's. Now, forensics confirms the bullets recovered from the murders of Joanne and Warren match a weapon previously used in a gang shootout years ago. Now, the gun used was known to belong to a Dark Heart member. So I went back to episode 1 to see whose gun was it that was used to kill Joanne and Warren, and it was Cliff. So how did Cliff come to having a gun that was used years ago and was used by the same gang they're robbing? Did Cliff take it from one of the houses they hit? Did he buy it off some random person off the streets that came across the gun? Or was this a part of Robbie's plan to use an old weapon of the Dark Hearts to make it look like it was an inside job? Meanwhile, Aleah and Lizzie pay a visit to Peach's job and pass out missing flyers of Sam, hoping to get some more information. There's a reward given to the person who comes forward with any important information as to finding Sam, as we get this particular guy, who we later know as Denny, as the camera focuses on him. Now, back with Tom, he and Tony pay a visit to Jason at the bar to question him. They show him footage from the 2017 shootout as Perry steps in. Tom cuts straight to the facts. They've got a leak, and they know it. Tom tells them that whoever the gun belongs to is most likely the leak and will help them find Sam. Now, Perry and Jason, being who they are, give them the cold shoulder and say they'll handle it in-house, and they have them leave. Now, based on the interaction, either Tony's one hell of an actor, because I believe he already knows Perry and Jason based on my theory, or he's not the leak that I believe him to be within the task force. Now, just because we know that Aaron's involvement as MZ, this gun situation could still mean that there is 2 leaks within the Dark Hearts, making Shane and Breaker those leaks besides Aaron. Now, perhaps one of the more subtle but important moments of the episode unfold at the pond, where Sam and Maeve's bond continues to deepen. We see Sam and Mave bonding over making better decisions than their troubled parents, a shared journey of seeking different paths. Now, Sam yet again brings up deers. Last week, he mentioned how he wished that he can talk to deers to warn them to stay off the road and not get hit, and here he's now seeing deers in person and telling them the exact same thing. To me, this is deliberate. It seems to be setting up Sam having something to do with deers at some point this season. Now, this is a sweet moment between the two characters, as Sam was never taught how to swim, so we watch as Mave teaches him how to float. In doing so, she tells him how her father, Billy, taught her by throwing her right into the pool, as here we see she's doing the opposite with Sam, as he tells her that she's a much better teacher than her father. As she tells Sam that the beauty of getting older is you can choose what you take from your parents and what you leave behind. Again, I think this is all setting up a tragic ending for at least one, if not both of these characters. It's not their faults that both of their parents indirectly has both of them in their current situations. Sam's parents' involvement with the Dark Hearts led to their deaths and his kidnapping, and Billy's relationship with Aaron got him killed, and the rest is history. Both Sam and Mave share the same experience of losing their parents, and now it'll be interesting to see if they can break free from this cycle of violence and tragedy that consumed their parents, or are they too destined to repeat it? Seeing the visual of Mave teaching Sam how to float on his own, my mind be seen again at some point. Will we see her letting him go to his freedom and safety, or letting him go because he's dead? I truly hope that it's option 1, that we do get to see both Mave and Sam make it out of this situation without being harmed, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, from one set of kids losing their parents, we shift to Emily visiting her brother Ethan in jail. They make small talk, but beneath the surface, the pain is very present. Emily lies about their dad asking about him all the time, as Ethan doubts this because last time Tom was here, he only dropped off his suit but didn't actually see his son. We see Ethan is taking full responsibility of what happened to their mother. Now, I do wonder how this particular plot will play into the overall narrative. Right now, it seems to be a direct exploration of forgiveness. Can one find a way to forgive someone for such a terrible thing, even though their family and their circumstances being the mental health was involved? I do believe this will be more important to Tom's arc and his family more than the task force elements of the show. This arc is deeply tied to Tom's ability to function. His personal burden evident in last week's moments where he dismissed Lizzie's idea and also he dismissed the tip calls that came in, clearly impacting his professional focus. To me, until Tom addresses his internal conflict, it will remain a significant distraction from the task force pressing case. Meanwhile, we watch as desperation drives Cliff and Robbie into an increasingly dangerous territory. Cliff believes he's found a solution to their drug problem in Ray, a recently released ex-con and past cellmate. We see in this episode that Ray is a problematic individual. He's number one, a shitty and abusive husband and a terrible father. To me, these are all qualities that hint at his unreliability and his ruthlessness. Now, Cliff and Robbie provide Ray with the need-to-know information, explaining they stumbled upon these drugs and must move them without going through the established channels like Freddy. Ray in turn suggests someone named Lee Whitehead who allegedly has connections with the Colombians. Now, as we'll later find out in this episode, this was a capital, stupid idea that bites them in the ass later. This move emphasizes the recklessness born of desperation and fear. Cliff and Robbie, with no resources or backup, are walking into a den of wolves. This decision really highlights the profound lack of foresight from these two, as they feel cornered and clearly operating under immense pressure. Now, back on the investigation, we watch as Aleah and Lizzie meet with Denny, the guy we saw earlier at Peach's job. Now, Denny wants clarification on this $25,000 reward. He really wants to know if it still applies if Sam is found dead or alive. Denny reveals Peaches had been bragging about hitting houses with Cliff, a name he recognizes from his past working with Cliff before moving on to collecting trash. Aleah immediately calls Tom, and now Cliff is squarely on their radar as they now have his home address. We watch as the task force arrives at Cliff's house. Now they notice signs that suggest a break-in, and without waiting for backup, they enter as a unit. Now inside, we watch as two masked figures quickly hide. We watch the team splits up as chaos erupts. We see Tom is ambushed and violently thrown downstairs just before Lizzie freezes, unable to react in time to help him. Now Aleah, however, apprehends the other masked individual who turns out to be Shelly, Ray's wife. Now Ray, the other masked figure, starts to flee. Now Tom, having taken a severe blow to the head, begins to hallucinate seeing his dead wife Susan, literal manifestation of his unresolved grief, but also shows us what's on his mind. Now Lizzie, desperate to make amends for her freezing up, she chases after Ray. As she gets into a scuffle with him, she loses her gun. Now just as Ray is about to grab it, Tony arrives, tackling Ray to the ground and making the arrest. So what did that scene just tell us? Number one, Aleah and Tony are on point. They can handle this situation. Hostile situations are something they can handle. While on the other hand, Lizzie and Tom, not so much. Again, Tom's mind is clearly elsewhere. Literally, we see him thinking about his wife and everything going on with the case. And then we see the hesitation with Lizzie. That right now seems to be a mystery. Now, my question is, will this uneven team dynamic be important to later on in the season where we're going to see Tom and Lizzie maybe making up for what happened? Or is this just proof that they're not a great team because we also know that there's a leak potentially within the team? Now we watch as Cliff and Robbie arrive and they pull up to Cliff's house only to see it being swarmed with police. As again, Cliff's genius idea and Robbie to go along with it has just exploded in their face. As they quickly drive away, not yet realizing that Ray's capture has just completely screwed them over, exposing their entire operation. Now, back at the Dark Hearts bar, we see Perry tries to pry information from Donna at the bar. Donna eventually tells him that Shane's lady mentioned he's been acting different lately. So I'm starting to wonder, is Donna working with Aaron and they're now using Shane as their fall guy for the leak within the Dark Hearts? Now, if this comes to be true, I wonder what would Donna's motives be? Now, to me, it's clear that there's a dislike from Donna on Perry's end, and it kind of stems from what seems to be a very complicated romantic relationship between these two characters, which suggests that she might want to see the Dark Hearts be destroyed. Or perhaps like Aaron, she had a close relationship with Billy, more of like a motherly bond, and she seeks revenge for his death. Now again, the exact nature between Donna and Perry history remains unclear, but it's evident that this subplot carries significant weight, potentially weaving into the larger themes of revenge and justice within the criminal underworld. Now, back with the task force, we watch as Tom refuses medical attention after suffering a grade 2 concussion, no thanks to Lizzie. As the task force takes turns playing good cop, bad cop as they interrogate Shelley and Ray. It's here we see Aleah, who truly shines, displaying her intuitive empathy. She observes Shelley's fear, realizing the telltale signs of domestic violence from her experience with Ray. As Aleah shares her own past trauma, a brave confession that instantly shatters Shelley's defenses. This raw vulnerability allows Shelley to find a safe space, explaining that Cliff had visited them earlier asking Ray for his help. Now, upon hearing Shelley's confession, Ray realizing he's completely exposed and he begins to sing like a bird. We watch as he cooperates, hoping for leniency, agreeing to set up a meeting with Cliff the following evening to discuss selling the drugs. However, the harsh reality of the situation quickly materializes. Despite his cooperation, Ray is still undoubtedly screwed for physically attacking a federal officer. Meanwhile, Cliff and Robbie discuss their possible escape plan. They discuss heading north near Toronto. It's during this conversation that Ray's text comes through, unknowingly setting in motion the task force trap. Oblivious to Ray's betrayal, they head off to scout the meeting location. Now the narrative shifts to a more personal yet equally vital development. As we watch Lizzie and Tony are at a bar, a seamlessly innocent outing that reveals layers of their characters and hints at future complications. The conversation revolves around Lizzie's freeze-up at Cliff's house. She confesses that this isn't an isolated incident, admitting a long track record of similar failures which led her to join the task force. To me, this discussion is potentially setting the stage for a critical decision Lizzie will have to make, potentially involving Tony. A moment where she might have to rise above her past anxieties. Now, adding to the scene, some of Lizzie's old troopers appear, poking fun of her, further emphasizing her past struggles. Now, we watch as Tony steps in as he delivers his uplifting speech, clowning her former colleagues and also reminding Lizzie of her capabilities. Now, I feel like one of these characters are just destined to die. Now, we know in this scene that both Lizzie and Tony are single, and a romantic connection between the two seems to be going on. This blossoming relationship, however, could drastically complicate matters, especially if my theory holds true. In this scene, we see Tony abruptly leaves, rushing off to meet someone. This sudden departure just adds more to my suspicions, as his words in his speech about honorable law enforcement seem to be a little too on the nose. It might be a possible red herring, or perhaps a glaring sign that he is the leak. Now, as we come to an end of this episode, back at Tom's house, we see Aleah dropping him off. We watch as his older daughter, Sarah, apologizes for the other night at the family dinner. Sarah tells her father that she doesn't want to watch him turn into her mother, who was consumed by taking care of Ethan 24/7. As we see Tom tell Sarah that he doesn't want Ethan back and he can't forgive Ethan for what he did. Meanwhile, Emily is outside and hears this entire conversation. This ongoing focus on Tom's fractured family is all about finding forgiveness and healing. Tom isn't the only one trapped in this cycle. Robbie can't forgive Jason, nor can Aaron. Their inability to let go of past grievances isn't just a personal struggle, it's the anchor of this series, highlighting how unresolved trauma clouds judgment, leading to poor decisions for themselves and those around them. Now, it's here we get a brief but critical flashback to the day Tom and Susan welcomed little Emily and Ethan into their family through adoption. This joyful memory serves as a powerful counterpoint to Tom's current bitterness. It's a reminder of the love and hope that once filled their home, and perhaps a subtle message to Tom. Susan, who loved Ethan and Emily unconditionally, would never want Tom to abandon a child who has already experienced a life of abandonment through the foster system. To me, this flashback just deepened the emotional stakes, framing Tom's eternal struggle and his eternal conflict as a possible feeling of betrayal of his late wife to their family. Now, as we cut to the next morning, Joe arrives at Tom's house to give him news that there's a leak within the task force. But before that, he tells Tom that the person Jason killed about the rule violation was Billy. But again, he's not here to discuss that. which to me is obviously an oversight because with that information, they would have been able to look into Billy's family history and link it back to Robbie. But Joe shows Tom footage of a member of the Dark Hearts who's a lieutenant sitting outside Cliff's house. But the question is, how would a Dark Heart lieutenant know about Cliff? Because there's a leak. As our last scene shows Tom arriving to HQ and he's left to wonder, who can he trust now within his task force? As the stage is now being set for what I imagine to be a thrilling and emotionally charged continuation of the remaining episodes, as Tom has to grapple with both his personal trauma and potentially professional betrayal. Now, to that last point, some of you all have mentioned in the comments that maybe it's a member of the task force, but instead it might be Kathleen. Theory being that she's been forced to retire recently and she's maybe secretly working with the Dark Hearts and making money on the side to feed them information. But to me, my gut's telling me, as you all know, that Tony's the leak. Again, last week, he was the one who really made it an effort to get the background on Tom. He was the one who sat in on the information that Joe gave Tom about Billy. And in this episode, he was the one that was running late to the meeting, and then later in the episode, he had to run off all of a sudden. Now, on the flip side, he did save Lizzie. If he's a leak, he didn't have to do that. He also made that speech, which he also didn't have to make, but was that all an effort to make him out to be this good guy? Again, Tony seems to be almost too obvious, but is it obvious? Now, the only thing I have on Aleah so far is rewatching episode 2. She mentioned to Tom that there are rats and mice in their bathroom, which could be the show's subtle way of saying that she's the rat. But personally, I just don't see the Dark Hearts working with her and having her be involved in their business and them working together. But I guess that could be the point. No one would suspect her. Now, Lizzie to me is the wild card because out of the entire task force, she just is the only one that stands out to me that doesn't really fit in. Her having an ex-boyfriend may be important to the story. Her being bad at her job, which come to think of it, might actually be on purpose. She lets people off the hook, and she almost did in this episode, but she had to go after Ray to kind of make up for having frozen up in front of Tom. So I beg the question, who do you all pick so far as your top person to be the leak within a task force, but also besides Aaron, who's the leak within the Dark Hearts? Now, overall, I found this episode to be really good. Not as good as episodes 1 and 2, but still a really solid episode of television. I think for me, I would rank my personal interest more towards what's going on with Robbie and Mave and the kidnapping dilemma, followed by the task force finding Sam and what's going on with Tom and his personal family story. And then lastly, I would say the Dark Heart stuff is probably my least favorite aspect of the show. To me, the Dark Hearts plot of uncovering the leak really doesn't have that much satisfaction because I could care less about Jason and Perry, and I really hope they get taken down. My favorite scene in this episode was the opening scene because I just find the performances between Robbie and Mave to be extremely compelling, and their emotional responses to losing Billy has been great so far. Now, we didn't get much of Mave in this episode, but what we did get was great. And also, Robbie was kind of on the back burner, like he was just kind of in behind the scenes and having Cliff lead the way. But I expect both of those characters to be maybe more of a focus in next week's episode. I think I've said all I need to say about this episode. So with that being said, that's going to be a wrap of my breakdown of episode 3 of Task. So now it's time to hear what you all thought about this episode. Comment below your thoughts about everything we discussed, from the terrible decision by Rob and Cliff to getting Ray involved, and how much longer till the FBI finds out Robbie's name. How would you all rank the plot so far from your favorite to your least favorite? And again, who's the leak within the task force? Who's the leak besides Aaron and the Dark Hearts? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Now, if you all have made it to this point in the breakdown, I really appreciate you all's support. Do me a favor, put in the comments right now, hashtag who's the leak. Thank you all for watching or listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Also, when you all hit the like button, there's also going to be a hype button that pops up, which is a new feature on YouTube that helps spread this video to new viewers. Speaking of, if you all can hit that share button, I would really appreciate it to share this to anyone and everyone you know that's interested in talking about this show. And lastly, please consider subscribing to the channel for more task breakdowns and so much more. Now, if you all are listening to this in podcast form, I appreciate you all. If you could like and also give this podcast a review and subscribe to the podcast, I would appreciate that. All right, y'all, don't forget you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I will see you all on the next breakdown of episode 4 of Task.